A lot of those type of companies were a little bit challenged pre-COVID, but now imagine post-COVID, could they then use social inflation to their advantage? Absolutely. Can they tell a story of trust, of delivering, being a savior for the country? Is there that sort of theme that can happen in the trial? I think absolutely.
All right, today we have with us Tricia Baxter, Managing Partner of the Northeast Office of Morgan and Aiken. So welcome, Tricia.
Hey, Amber, thanks for having me on. I'm super excited. You're my girl. I love this. I'm such a fan of you. So thank you for having me on your show.
Oh, likewise. Really excited to get your thoughts from the legal side.
That's awesome. Can't wait.
So you've spent many years on the litigation side of insurance and have stated that surprises are the Darth Vader of litigation. So how can carriers avoid them?
I'm a Star Wars fan, obviously. If I'm using Darth Vader in my branding, I'm a Star Wars fan. But yes, I have found over the years that surprises really are what get under the skin of clients. If you've been practicing long enough, you start to see most things. I mean, there's always stuff. No one would have predicted COVID, right? And COVID obviously is influencing litigation. There's always stuff, surprises that come up that you can't plan for, but 70 to 80% of them you've probably seen.
I think that the theme of being proactive really plays out across the industry. I think that's a really relevant way of how it obviously plays out in the litigation piece, of really being proactive and not just waiting for things to come to you, but really trying to strategically think ahead using your experience and, I'm sure case precedents in your case. Yeah, I think that's a really solid point there. Another challenge that carriers face is having claims open for long periods of time, heavy legal costs. So how do you close claims, especially complex claims, quickly?
So that's really tough. I'm not going to lie. Complex claims. So the type of plaintiffs' attorneys that take complex claims, many of them are the type of what I call the investor, that they think of their case as an investment that will, with some time and some work, will grow in value. So if you have somebody like that, it's going to take some time to resolve it. But even those you can work on, even those you can have conversations early on to set the foundation, set the stage for an earlier than normal resolution. You're probably not settling a complex case within the first 2 months of litigation. But can you settle it in the next 6 to 8 months? Can you settle it before the production of expert reports? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. But I think having that conversation and figuring out what type of plaintiff's counsel that you have is step one, and pushing that towards resolution. If you just assume they're not open to it, you're never going to even consider an early resolution for complex cases.
Working together, human to human, I mean, that makes perfect sense. And I'm sure it's not always, sunshine and butterflies, but
it's not. I've had several that the first couple of cases with them, we are not in a mediation until after expert reports are produced. But then the third time I said, look, I know what your expert report is going to look like. I know what your damages are going to look like. Can we just push this discussion ahead of time? And they'll consider it. It doesn't happen every time, but you won't know until you have the discussion.
So pre-COVID, social inflation was a hot topic of conversation. Lots of talk about rising jury costs, nuclear verdicts, etc. So is social inflation still a concern, and will it evolve with COVID?
Yes, 100%. It is still a concern. I think it's just a different type of concern. So pre-COVID, it was a lot of the social inflation had to do with if you had a theme of deception running through your case. And if you had a theme, especially on the defendant's conduct, if there was some sort of deception that the plaintiff's bar could leverage, you were looking at a social inflation, nuclear verdict type setting. So, but that is very cultural. What is deception, and where that company is in that culture at that particular time matters tremendously. So what happens with social inflation in the end, I think is a big question mark, because we don't know where COVID's going. The deception will always be there, but I think it actually might benefit some of the defendants and helping them tell a story of survival, of thriving, of maintaining the employment of their workers, not shutting down, not cutting salaries, that sort of thing. So I think it actually might get better for some defendants.
That is a really fascinating perspective to think about social inflation working in the favor of businesses. And there's a lot of businesses that are trying to support, masks, gloves, all the, ventilators. You've got all these companies who are really in the fight against COVID. So certainly if they get attacked later, you can see how that could work in well. That's a really, they always think about it being so negative, right? Social inflation. So I think the perspective of it working in the favor of companies is really interesting. Another area of COVID we're seeing a huge impact in is business interruption. So Insurance Journal reported that from March to July 2020, there were over 700 COVID business interruption claims filed.
Wow.
Do you think we'll see a similar uptick in COVID general liability files?
I don't know if it's going to be the same. I think the bulk of the COVID litigation will be in the coverage side. I don't practice coverage, but I think the GL side is going to be very dependent on the venue that they're in. And the conservative venues, I don't think you're going to see a large uptick in GL suits being filed. I think the plaintiff's attorneys that operate in those more conservative venues know that it's going to be a big uphill battle, and they may not want to put the time and resources in the conservative venues. But the liberal venues, I think you will see an uptick, not to the same degree as the business interruption coverage claims, but you're going to see an uptick, especially if they have one against a defendant that doesn't have the story. Maybe it's the defendant who took the PPP loan and they shouldn't have,
Sure.
Whatever their story may be, if they know they have a defendant that has not done the right thing during COVID, maybe they've cut salaries while their CEO has, flying on a private plane somewhere, then I think you're going to see an uptick in that. Liberal venues don't really afford motion practice to get out of. So in liberal venues, more often that you're looking in trial or settlement. And I think they might roll the dice and see if they can do that. Create a story that would resonate with a jury against a defendant that maybe caused that plaintiff to get COVID, whether it's they didn't have the right social distancing signs, maybe they let too many people into their shop or their place of business, maybe they didn't have accurate cleaning policies, whatever it may be. I think their plaintiff's bar will get very creative about the GL COVID stuff in the more liberal venues, but not at the same volume. I just can't imagine that.
Yeah, it's really incredible to see the uptick, and obviously it's been a hot topic in the media. You don't often see insurance coverage get as much attention as certainly business interruption has over previous months.
Yeah, I've never in my life, and I did coverage work for probably 2 years way back when, and never in my life have I seen business interruption gotten so much press. It's insane.
And I guess like all insurance, right? Until you need it, it's one of those coverages that kind of flies under the radar until all of a sudden, wow, millions of businesses might need this coverage. So,
and I can only imagine how expensive it's going to be in the coming years with, I read something like the amount that AIG has paid out on some claims, and it's an astronomical figure that I think there's going to be a second guessing of premiums and what they offer and the exclusions. It's going to be insane.
Yeah, lots of filings and rewordings I can foresee in the coming years here for sure. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to chat today. Really enjoyed your perspective on the litigation side.
Thanks, Amber. I love it. Anytime you want to chat, I'll come on.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you.